And the next question I have for you, David, is from John K.
Mm-hmm.
And he asks, when will the first set of books that you made be available in audiobook form? He's referring specifically to the Dahak series.
Well, the short and succinct answer is, I don't know. I'm not really consulted too much on the production end of things.
Okay.
Okay. It's kind of like Baen does a better job than a lot of publishing houses on involving its writers in decisions that are production and release oriented. But the bottom line is that it has to fit the publisher's business plan and needs at any given moment. Tor is pretty darn good about that too, and Baen and Tor, who are my two publishers, are careful about not stepping on each other where major releases are involved, which is good. But I'm not really clear on exactly how the audiobook production chain works. Initially, and this is my impression, I've actually never discussed it with Tony, and I probably should, but this is sort of what I soaked up by osmosis and therefore may be wrong, is that initially the audiobooks were being produced more on a basis of somebody like Audible or whatever contacting Baen and saying, we think you've got enough readership for this series to do these books. I think that there is now a much more comprehensive marketing plan involved for ebooks and audiobooks and so forth are concerned, coming from not just Baen, but from publishing houses in general, because it's become so much a bigger part of the total sales volume, especially ebooks. But I'm not sure where an Audible release of the Mutineer's Moon series, because there hasn't been a new book in the series in so long, where that would fall in the priorities of either or Baen and somebody like Audible who's doing the books. Okay, I think there would definitely be a market for it, but probably not as much as for, say, another Honor Harrington or something. So if you have X number of slots, you put into it the ones you expect to generate the most. That's the main reason, frankly, that there haven't been more of the Stephanie, the Star Kingdom books with Stephanie and Lionheart and the other, because they did well, but they did not do as well as another mainstream Honor book would have done. And if my writing schedule and their production schedule has room for one Honorverse themed book, they would much rather have something that's pushing the main storyline than something that is really, really cool but happening 600 years ago.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? Well, I mean, the whole 600 years ago was only like 1,800 years from today, but you know what I'm saying. So that there's, until you actually get into writing professionally, I think it's sometimes a little difficult to really understand how the various decisions all factor into each other as to what the author's going to write next, what the publishing house wants to produce next, what the distributor wants to slot in next. Okay, there are some books, some series that are strong enough that it's like, yeah, we'll take any of those we can get. There are others where it's like, we'd really have another one of Blanc. You see what I'm saying? And sometimes it's not really the stories that the author most wants to be telling, that the distributor wants to be distributing. And there has to be some balance in there, because if the storyteller is going to tell a good story, it has to be one that he wants to tell.
Right.
Now there's a difference between I gotta and like, yeah, I want to tell that story, and oh crap, not another one of those. I mean, that's kind of the gauge. And sometimes even a series that you love and characters that you love, you just got to go away from for a little while, because otherwise the characters are going to get stale. You're going to say, oh, I know who's got to die this time. The protagonist. Bam. Okay, series over. I mean, that's why Conan Doyle threw Holmes off the Reichenbach Falls, and then he had to bring him back. Okay, so it's kind of the same thing, and that's why, like, for example, killing Honor off would have been a high risk move.
Mm-hmm.
I'd made too many people care too much about her. Now the problem is, and I was just actually talking about this on the website, on my official site in the Honorverse forum. Somebody was saying, yeah, she's got all these Beowulf relatives. I mean, she's royalty on that side of it. And all this time I was thinking of her as like this yeoman's daughter, kind of thing, right up to the minute that she became countess and stedholder and everything else. Well, in my original visualization of the Cosmic Hall, Honor didn't have anything to do with that side of her family at all, except for Uncle Jacques. When Allison left Beowulf, she and her mother basically had one of those tearing, I'll never speak to you again moments. And they didn't. Okay? The only one of her Beowulf relatives that she really had anything to do with was Uncle Jacques, her mother's 5-year older twin. It's complicated. But anyway, yes, you got to love Honorverse eugenics. But anyway, and it wasn't until her son came along. And her son basically gets called in by somebody at the Admiralty or the Foreign Office and says that this would have been before the war with the Solarian League started, while the Beowulf's still part of the League, so forth. So her son, Stedholder Harrington, Earl Whitehaven, everything else, and he's like in his early 20s, gets called in by somebody in the government and says, we need somebody to make very quiet contact with Beowulf at the highest levels. You. And that's when you finally meet her family and realize, the irony of the fact that she was related essentially to royalty on her mother's side. Now, for me as the storyteller, it does work that Allison was so determined that she was, she left. Basically, Allison was determined that she wasn't going to be royalty. Mm-hmm. Okay? I am not going to be hammered into following the career track that everybody expects. I am not going to be one of those everybody's equal, but I'm more equal than you are people, And the thing that really ultimately frosted her mother's chops and led to the depth of the estrangement was that when Allison went off to Beowulf, she entered exactly the career that her mother had been trying to make her enter in Beowulf, and became one of the top 2 or 3 people in the field, which is precisely what her mother wanted to do in Beowulf. Yeah, well, her mother's theory was that meant that she wasn't doing it because her mother was trying to make her do it, kind of thing, which there was some truth to. And she was basically, but basically Allison was absolutely determined that not going to happen to her daughter after everything she had to go through to get out of that crap. Mm-hmm. Okay, so Honor really never thought of herself as being related to the upper echelons of Beowulf. Okay, they were family that she practically never talked to. It's like being the guy whose 17th cousin is the chairman of the board at GM. Okay. It just really doesn't impinge too much on what you're doing in Mississippi. All right. And that's really kind of where Honor is. And then as she has become more and more senior in the Navy, as she has accrued more and more civilian political power to go with it, she has basically been pushed back into more contact with her family. Mm-hmm. Now, when I realized that was going to happen, her Beowulf family turned into much nicer people than they were in my original vision. Raoul was not much going to like his grandmother when he met her. Okay? Well, actually, his great-grandmother. He was not much going to like her at all, and they were going to have to work through some stuff. Okay? I actually wrote that scene, and it was pretty good. His tree cat didn't like her either, not one bit. But then ultimately what happens is she takes a good look at him, and he's got his mother's eyes and his grandmother's eyes. Mm-hmm. And when she looks at him, she sees the granddaughter she never let herself know. And that's kind of what, pulls her out of her still long-standing anger
Okay.
at her daughter. Okay. And what happens this way is that Honor Harrington's first great tactical victory she achieved by being born as her grandmother's first granddaughter. And just let it go at that, you know. But Allison is still like, oh no, you are not spending summers at the Hampton. Okay? No. Okay? You're not getting on the jet plane and flying down to the Bahamas. No, you're staying home. You're going to summer school. Okay. You are your father's daughter, not your grandmother's granddaughter. You understand that? Okay, that's really what it was. Now, the other thing in the original iteration that would have guaranteed the estrangement between Honor and the Beowulf crew is that the Beowulf crew thought that Allison had married beneath her by marrying Honor's dad, despite the fact that Honor's dad basically single-handed goes up against about 40 trained terrorists to get her mother back before they've even said more than, 40 words to each other. Okay, it's like, no, you can't marry him just because he, stormed the gates of hell to get you back. No, and so I will just let you imagine for yourself how that attitude would have gone over with one Honor Harrington.
Uh-huh.
Okay, it would have been like, oh, really? I got something for you. But I mean, those are the kind of things that happen, especially in a story arc as long as the one I've written. I mean, seriously, I'm trying to remember. I think that Basilisk Station, that Honor the Queen, I think takes place in 1905 PD. Okay. And Uncompromising Honor wraps up in 1923 PD. So that's like 18 years in universe. Okay. And 25 years in terms of writing the books. Actually, a little more than that. Not a lot, because Basilisk Station and Honor the Queen came out about a month apart.
Okay.
But the in-universe time is a little longer than that, because there's like 2 years between Basilisk and Honor the Queen, I think.
Right.
But that's an awful... Even if I weren't dealing with war, over a volume of hundreds of light years across, just for the characters and the time involved, that's huge. In doing something like that, you do your damnedest to keep the continuity up. But there's going to be slippage. There are going to be things you have to adjust. You have to, fix on the fly. The biggest problem in the Honorverse, the biggest thing that was the hardest to fix, is the fact that the Solarian League wasn't supposed to be as totally outclassed as it was when the war against Manticore and Haven finally began. That created quite a few problems for me in terms of generating tension. Okay, I mean, if you know that, okay, my 4 destroyers can kill your 6 battle cruisers without getting their paint scratched, it's a little hard to make people worry about, the fleet's going on a death ride. Okay. Now, I managed it quite nicely in Uncompromising Honor, but you can't do it with fleets. Okay, I mean, there's no conceivable Solarian weapon, tactic, or strategy that could make a battle between their walls of battle survivable for the SLN, far less winnable. I mean, there just isn't. And that's a fault of the fact that the Solarians were supposed to have like 25 more years to get a clue before they were stupid enough to pick a fight with the Manties. Unfortunately, they wound up being stupid sooner. So it's kind of like, oh boy, that was really stupid in this iteration.